spreadsheet over there.
It's the start of a new season. So much hope and excitement as we get our first look at the 2018 Denver Broncos. The fans are filling in as the fog is burning off at UC Health Training Center, and the players are making their way out onto the field. Hello, and thank you for joining us for Broncos Camp Live, powered by Ford. I'm Phil Milani, alongside Matt Boyer and Steve Atwater. And guys, this is a day we've been waiting for a very long time. Matt, let's start with you. What are you most excited to see today?
I'm excited to see these fans out here. I know we haven't seen the fans for a couple of months. I know OTAs and the off-season program, that's true football, and the guys are getting ready. But it's not the same. It just feels different when you got Broncos country in the house. I know the fans were lining up at 4 a.m. They're probably most excited to see Case Keenum. I'm most excited to see those guys, though, the fans.
4 a.m., Steve. Coming off of a 5-11 season, Broncos country always shows up. You know that.
Man, I turned on the TV this morning, and I saw the lines. I couldn't believe. Well, I can't say I couldn't believe it because, hey, fortunately, we're in a state where the fans love our organization, and it's really an honor to be out here with all our great fans.
It helps when you have that guy, number 58, Von Miller, hanging out with. You get to see him up close and personal. There's a lot of 58 jerseys, and I'm sure he'll be signing a lot of autographs after practice. Steve, it's the start of a new season. As a player, what's going through these guys' mind right now?
Well, man, just coming out, trying not to let the crowd disrupt them. Try to keep their concentration and do all the things they've been working on in the off season, and just go out and play hard.
Are there nerves, or what were you like?
Yeah, definitely were some nerves early on, especially guys, especially the new guys who are right out of college, thinking, man, I'm practicing for the first time, as an NFL player. Going through their minds, I'm here with Von Miller on the same field with Von Miller. That stuff is kind of overwhelming sometimes, and as you've been in the locker room with them for a while, you start to get used to it, but still, it's still something to get used to.
It's definitely a little bit different than the off-season program. Before, in the spring, you're just trying to get used to each other and that kind of thing. Right now, jobs are on the line. You got to make an impression on the coaches, so you're really competing amongst your teammates. And guys, one of the guys who doesn't have to worry about a competition this year, Case Keenum, right, man?
Yeah, you look at Case and you think about we've heard it from Vance Joseph and John Elway all offseason. His spot is safe. He is the unquestioned leader of this team. And we've seen differences in guys all offseason as far as being held to a higher standard. You think about DT and Emmanuel. I think those guys see Case, see the adversity that he's been through, and there's just a baseline of respect right there for that guy and what he's been able to do at his previous stops, especially last season in Minnesota.
You could feel a difference in the air. When Peyton Manning was here, this was the leader of the entire team. Everybody tried to play up to that standard. That was missing a little bit the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it was certainly missing the last couple of years without the team knowing, and not just the offense, the entire team knowing that we had one person who's at the helm at the most important position that I believe is on the football field, at the quarterback position. So having that secured with Case Keenum, knowing that he's coming off a really good year in Minnesota, hoping that he can replicate that same thing here, I think gives everyone a sense of comfort. And, again, the defensive side of the ball last year, I think that they felt like they had to do more than they needed to in order to help the team win. Hopefully the offense will be able to pull their share of the weight this year, and it'll be equally distributed. So I believe that defense will feel much better and play better as well.
And we heard John Elway say this yesterday, that Case Keenum was going to be the anchor of the Broncos offense. And he said also maybe late in the fourth quarter, where last year they were out of games, Case is going to give them a chance to win almost every single game.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about, the adversity that he's gone through. I also think that the teams that he's had been with, the offenses that he's had to learn, I think he's just got such a complete grasp of NFL offensive schemes that I think that when it comes to the fourth quarter, all of that stuff, he's not going to be thinking. All that stuff is just going to be reactionary. It's going to become second nature to him. And I think those fourth quarter comebacks that were maybe missing last season, I think might show up this year.
We're expected to hear from Case Keenum following practice today. Matt, you actually bumped into him last night. What were you doing?
Yeah, I was. We're gonna have a piece up on DenverBroncos.com later today. Justin Simmons moving into the team hotel, but yeah, Case Keenum and the rest of his teammates were getting settled last night. It was cool to see them off the football field. I definitely think that he's got the respect of his teammates. I think that's most important. The guys like to joke around with Case, and I think he's definitely melded very well with this team.
Yeah, just knowing he's that guy who's going to always be around, a friend in the locker room, that kind of thing. Steve, you mentioned something that was interesting. The defense felt like they had to do more last year. When you're from a defensive player, I mean, you had John always over there, but just knowing that he was on that side of the ball, what'd that do for you?
Well, it gave us a tremendous sense of confidence. And when we got in close games, I remember standing on the sidelines at the end of games when we may be, down by 4 or 5 points, and there's 3 minutes left in the game. We're holding hands and like, we believe. And I can be honest with you, man, I don't recall many times when he didn't come through for us. So, we had a tremendous amount of confidence in our offense and respect for our offense on the practice field. Some days when we came out in the practice field, the offense got the better of us, made us better. Some days we got the better of them. So I think it's good to have a healthy respect for both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting once the offense starts going against the defense in training camp, just seeing, hey, that little bit of that competition between both sides of the football. Matt, Case Keenum coming in is part of changing the culture around here, right?
Yeah, we had a chance to catch up with Vance Joseph yesterday, and Vance has preached all offseason long about changing the culture both inside the locker room and inside the meeting rooms. And the Broncos have added 30 new players to this roster, and Case Keenum and some of those new guys are going to be a big reason why you're going to see a different team on the field this year.
We want a culture of accountability, which leads to a culture of winning. And that starts with myself, obviously setting the standards, and the players in the locker room spreading that culture throughout the locker room to keep it consistent. And that's happening. Obviously, we've added some veterans that we're really excited about in Case Keenum and McDonald, guys who are great football players, but also great leaders. We added a class, in my opinion, that are so mature and have the ability and the maturity to help us right now. So those things are in place, and we're excited.
For the full interview, be sure to check out denverbroncos.com. Vance talked a lot about Case and a lot about the rookie class, which he is very happy about. Plus, the new coaches. I think that he's very excited about those new coaches, coordinators Tom McMahon, Bill Musgrave, obviously here last year, but then you've got Zach Azzani, Mike Sullivan. These guys are going to help change the culture. I think I think they are going to execute the vision that Vance has.
Yeah, 6 new Broncos coaches. Tom McMahon, special teams coordinator. You heard John Elway say yesterday, we won't lose games on special teams this year. We saw that happen a few times last year. Zach Azzani, wide receivers. We've already seen Emmanuel Sanders say something like, first day I was like, whoa, what are we doing here? Kind of felt like college a little bit. Back to, getting back to that grind a little bit. Sean Kugler on the offensive line, expecting a more physical mindset along the offensive line this year. Curtis Motkins, running backs coach. Mike Sullivan, he was the quarterbacks coach. Of course, he worked with Eli Manning for the past several years. And then Greg Williams along the defensive backs coach last year, or coming in this year. Mm-hmm. Guys, what did you see a different feel out there on the field during the offseason program, right?
I think you mentioned it. I just think different coaches, getting different perspectives in here. You mentioned Mike Sullivan. I think Mike Sullivan is going to be huge for that quarterbacks room, especially having already coached Eli Manning. And he's a former Army guy. He's a former military guy. He's had a lot of. He's very interested in leadership styles and different leadership styles. And when I had a chance to talk to him, he's interested in things from like samurai warrior philosophy and Chinese warrior philosophy. I think a lot of different philosophies. That's what you want to see out here. You want to see coaches take from a lot of different cultures and a lot of different coaching aspects, and I think it just makes things more interesting for the guys.
Yeah, and then we see some of the offensive line work going on here, getting after it.
Hey,
already see Ron Leary healthy.
Okay. All right.
Finally getting a chance to see Ron Leary. He had a little bit of an operation back in May. He should be good to go. And Steve, as well as Jared Valdir, expected to be out there too.
Yeah, I'm extremely anxious to see Jared Valdir because we haven't really seen him. We didn't see him in the OTAs. And from what we saw yesterday, that the team is planning on easing him in, both he and Ron Leary, into the drill. So it'll be interesting to see how much he actually does today. But that's going to be a big key for this offense, how well that right tackle performs.
Well, no, we just saw him on the field. Shane Ray, 56. We didn't think that he was going to be on the field this past offseason. We thought, maybe in the regular season we'll see him, but he's healthy and ready for training camp.
Nice.
Yeah, good to see a lot of guys return back to the field. To see a few more offensive line drills there. That's really going to be a focus for this offense this year, just being able to protect Case Keenum. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, Shane Ray back out on the field. Turns out he didn't need that surgery.
No, and we talk about the pass rush. I think everybody, when the Broncos drafted Bradley Chubb was thinking about the pass rush. And it was like, well, if they don't have Shane Ray, it's okay. We've got Bradley Chubb, we've got Shaq Barrett, we've got Von Miller. But now that you add Shane Ray to the mix,
man.
just depth upon depth, and I think that's going to allow Joe Woods to do a lot of different things with that defensive front four.
I agree, and especially with the size of Bradley Chubb, he can be in there with both Von Miller and Shane Ray. He can go to the inside. He has that big body build. He almost looks like a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
He has the size of a defensive tackle, so it's going to be extremely exciting to see all those guys in there together.
Chubb, for a rookie, he came back in excellent shape after about a month break. I saw him yesterday in the cafeteria just wearing a T-shirt. He looked like he had even slimmed down maybe a little bit, knowing that you got to play faster, but he still has that big bulk that you want out of a guy like him. Maybe a Khalil Mack type of player, right?
Yeah, I think that this rookie class is extremely disciplined. I think we saw it during rookie minicamp. They were talking about going back to the hotel, extra study sessions by themselves, getting in early, getting your work done, and coming back prepared because they knew that if they wanted to contribute right away, and a lot of these guys were stars in their teams, Cortland Sutton, Royce Freeman, Bradley Chubb, we just talked about. If you want to contribute right away, you got to be prepared, and I think these guys have come in ready to go.
Yeah, I agree. And if you don't know what the heck is going on, you have no chance to get onto the field.
Well, it's exciting because there's so many off-season changes. We had a chance to sit down with John Elway and ask him about his expectations for those new additions during training camp.
Feel good about what we did in free agency, the people that we've added, some real quality people there that we think can come in and help us. We feel like we had a good draft and got some, a lot of good guys players that can come in and help us early now, but still they're young guys, and so it's going to take some time. And so you never know. That's the exciting part, to say, okay, that we obviously worked very hard this offseason. Now we'll see what happens and kind of see what what the report card says once we get into the season.
Back here at the UC Health Training Center, our thanks to legendary safety Broncos safety Steve Atwater, Ring of Famer, and hopefully soon Pro Football Hall of Famer, for joining us. We're going to bring in Andrew Mason now.
One legend to the next.
Exactly.
I don't
and
know
the
about
Hawaiian
that.
shirt, Mason's already in camp mode.
Yeah.
It's camp mode. It's festive time. I mean, you've got fans back here on the hillside once again for another training camp. It's a celebration day. I mean, we were talking about it on the air on Orange and Blue 760 yesterday. I feel like it dragged. The offseason dragged in the last few weeks especially. It just feels like that last hour or so of a long drive when you know you're getting close to your destination, but it takes forever. Your eyes are drooping a bit, but now
It's
we're
here.
all wide awake. We're here. Let's go.
And the fog burned off just in time, so the temperature is absolutely perfect out here. And let's take a look at some of the Broncos draft picks. We just heard from John Elway talking about the younger guys. Let's take a look at the Broncos draft from this year. Bradley Chubb, 5th overall pick. We talked a lot about him and how he'll be able to spice up this Broncos defense. 2nd round pick, Cortland Sutton, then Royce Freedom, Isaac Yadam, Josie Jewell, Deshaun Hamilton, Troy Fumagalli, Sam Jones, Keyshawn Bierria, and David Williams. And guys, they're going to count on this rookie class a lot this season to make an impact.
Yeah, I think that we've heard a lot about Chubb, but those guys in that 2 to 4 range, you think about Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton, Royce Freeman, all of those guys have a chance to come in and contribute right away, especially Freeman in a very, very young running back room.
Would not surprise me if he ends up breaking out of that running back room and ends up getting the most carries. Yeah, you've got Devontae Booker as the veteran, but Royce Freeman showed nice vision and explosiveness during OTAs. Now the $64,000 question is whether it translates when the pads go on, but certainly we saw enough at Oregon to believe that'll be the case. Another guy that people have their eyes on, Josie Jewell, out of the 4th round. Now, he's in uniform today, but not in a helmet. He's actually off to the side doing some work, so maybe he's got a little injury. We'll probably hear more about that at the end of practice.
And we're seeing the quarterbacks working with the tight ends a little bit here. One guy that we didn't get to see at all during the spring, Troy Fumagalli.
Yeah, I think that Fumagalli hopefully is going to come in ready to work. We talked to Jake Butt last year, who was injured all of last season, and he said the meeting rooms, the time spent with his tight end coach, Jeep Christ, instrumental as far as preparing him for this season. Hopefully, Fumagalli's taken a page out of that Jake Butt playbook and kind of applied those lessons to the offseason.
Well, even though he missed off-season work because of the sports hernia, there's a couple of things going for him. Number one, of course, he was at the Senior Bowl, so he got to work with Jeep Christ and the Broncos coaches. And number two, playing at Wisconsin, Wisconsin, coached by Paul Chryst, the brother of tight ends coach Jeep Chryst. So certainly he's got some intel and knowledge that maybe your average rookie coming in doesn't have.
It'll be interesting, that tight end room. A lot of talent there, but a little bit unproven talent. The competition, it'll be something to watch.
Yeah, I think all of those guys, Big Ten guys, by the way, Jake
That's
Blood,
true.
you've got Jeff
Says the
Ireman,
Michigan
yeah,
guy
I
here.
know you're a big
Fumagalli, Austin, Trailer. I think all of those guys have a shot. But as we spoke to Vance Joseph yesterday, it's the competition. That's what's going to form the depth chart. That's what Vance wants to see. So I don't think he's got a favorite. I don't think anybody has the lead right now. The best man's going to play.
Yeah, and I think tight end is one of those positions, like a few others on the roster, where there are really no sacred cows. It could be anybody who plays well in training camp and in the preseason who wins that job. I think after last year going 5-11, having a fair amount of changes on the roster, there are things that are wide open and dynamic. And coming off a season like that, I think that's a healthy thing. I think competition, accountability could bring out the best in these guys.
I'm excited about Jake Butt. He spent a lot of time in the film room last year after practice, watching practice, and then going, learning that offense and knowing what to do when his time came, and that's now. So he should have been a first-round pick last year, but of course he had the injury. So that's one position I'll look for. The other position I'm interested in, secondary. Of course, a lot of talk about Bradley Roby becoming a starter, but the question for me is what happens after that?
Yeah, you start with number 3 cornerback Tremaine Brock, the veteran that can do the job based on most of his career. Didn't play all that much in Minnesota last year, but you only have to go back to 2016 in San Francisco to see him working extensively and effectively. But then young guys, Brendan Langley, Isaac Yadam, Marcus Rios, you really want at least one of those guys to step forward and prove that at minimum they can be a number 4 cornerback, because look, that number 4 corner at some point, he's going to have to be the number 3 during the season. Inevitably, there will be an injury. You're going to be counting on that guy. Langley, to his credit, spent the offseason, extra time in the offseason, I should say, working with Chris Harris Jr. and Bradley Roby away from the facility when the Broncos had their downtime. And Isaac Yadam, they saw him at the Senior Bowl. I know they're high on him. And Marcus Rios, of course, emerged late last year. You want at least one of those guys to show that they are a solid NFL potential starting cornerback down the line in the making.
Yeah, I think that Langley and Yadam get a lot of the headlines, a lot of the talk, the buzz, if you will, around Broncos country. But Vance Joseph has gone out of his way to name drop Tremaine Brock whenever they talk about that 3rd cornerback position. And I think Brock's been kind of the forgotten guy. Mace, as you mentioned, didn't play with Minnesota very much, got in the building but didn't make an impact. I think that Vance Joseph is expecting a lot out of Tremaine Brock, especially with that veteran pedigree.
A lot of question marks to talk about all throughout training camp. This is just day one. A lot of excitement here at UC Health Training Center. Mace, you mentioned orange and blue 760.
Got the hat.
You're going to be running right off the set here to hop on the air there. What are your plans during training camp?
Well, on all weekdays, 10 to 1, Steve Atwater, Brian Edwards, and I will be live first and 10 at 10. Of course, Orange and Blue 760 will be having its entire morning to midday schedule out here. After practice, most days we'll be talking to guys live on air, so make sure you listen to that. And the way we're going to have our show is I might be kind of up here at a place like this, kind of watching practice from up high. Our guys are going to be down, other guys are going to be down the tent, so get a couple of different vantages on practice for you. It's the closest thing to live coverage that that can be provided, of course, because there's no video after the individual periods.
And, of course, you can see Orange and Blue Daily. It's on Channel 20. That's Orange and Blue Daily. You get to see Mace on camera. You get to see more of these Hawaiian shirts.
The array.
It's
Yes.
also Andy Lindahl and Tyler Columbus will be featured heavily on that show. And, Matt, this is just the first day. There's 13 open practices for the fans to come out to.
Yeah, a lot of excitement for the fans. I know the weekends usually fill up pretty quickly, but those weekday practices, still a ton of great showings from the fans. I think that, like we mentioned, competition is going to be huge throughout this camp for a lot of different positions. It's not these guys going through the motions. Broncos fans are really going to get treated to some highly, highly competitive battles out here on the field.
Yeah,
especially on Tuesday, starting then when the pads go on for the first time.
That's when it really gets started. The line was packed out here today. You can see it all the way down the parking lot. So you got to get here nice and early if you want that front row seat, because the berm behind us is absolutely packed. And if you can't make it out, of course, we'll be back here with Broncos Camp live every single morning from 9:30 to about 9:50. Give you a little bit of a taste taste for what it's like to be out of practice that day. And like Mace said, it's really going to get started once those pads get on. All right, well, that's going to do it for us for day one here at Broncos Camp. For Andrew Mason, Matt Boyer, I'm Phil Milani. Thank you for joining us for Broncos Camp Live, powered by Ford.